So I'm so excited to have Dr. Pam Popper with us today. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what she's accomplished because it's a lot. She is internationally recognized as an expert in nutrition, health, and medicine. She's a founder of the Wellness Forum, which is amazing because she also not only helps clients, but she also helps doctors understand how they can heal their body naturally. She's been in several documentaries. She's been on Processed People, Making a Killing, and the one that's really well known is Forks Over Knives. And she's written numerous books where one has been like on the bestseller for a while. So we're really excited for her to be with us and just kind of want to kind of share her story. I'm excited to hear her story as well. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into
Okay,
nutrition and health?
accidentally. Isn't that what people always tell you? Like they
Oh, always.
accidentally end up, So I was a sales and marketing executive. I was good at my job. I liked it. I was 50 pounds heavier than I am now. And I ate a terrible diet. And my exercise patterns were, well, let me put it this way. I had a long driveway and I used to put my garbage cans on the hood of my car and drive them down to the end of the driveway, right? So, and I kind of had a reputation for not being very interested in health. Like if there's something god awful to eat, Pam will probably eat it. And so, and I knew I had a weight problem. You know how you in the back of your mind, this is not good, but you don't do anything about it. So I read an article in the early 1990s in Red Book magazine. I don't even know if that magazine's still out there. And I was sitting in an airport, and it was about diet and health and the fact that your diet affects your health. Now, today, you can't read a newspaper without seeing something about it. But back then, it was really kind of unusual. And I thought, well, I'm interested in that. And then, fate and God get in the way a little bit, right? So I mentioned to a friend, I'd read this interesting article about diet. And she said, oh, we used to live in California, and my husband and I were good friends with John McDougall. So I'm going to loan you his book. You'll be so interested in this. And I read it. I stayed up all night and read it. It was the original McDougall plan. And I changed my diet. Like I'm always one of those like jump off the cliff and do it. So it wasn't, well, maybe I'll eat something different for breakfast. I got rid of all the bad food in my house. I bought new food. I was in 100%. And that's how it all started. And then I learned there's so much more wrong in healthcare besides just the diets we learn to eat, and gradually opened Wellness Forum, and we deal with all health issues ranging from your diet needs rehab to you have cancer, what should you do, right?
Yeah.
So all of that.
Yeah, similar story for me. Like I was an athlete growing up, so I didn't have to worry about my diet because I exercised so much
Hmm.
because I did everything. I mean, I was a competitive gymnast and then played soccer and then had to choose between the two and went on to play college soccer and then semi-professional and merit. Like by the end of my 20s, my body was completely depleted. I looked fit on the outside, but on the inside was a completely different story. And at that time, I was believing the doctors with things that were going on with my body, and I eventually had cancer, and I couldn't. I was like, it was a virus that kept on attacking me, and I couldn't get rid of it. And I kept on asking, "What else can I do? What else can I do?" And they were like, "Nothing." And I'm like, "You're young. It's going to go away." And I'm like, "Okay, game on. You just challenged me. So if you're going to challenge me, I'm going to go find an answer."
Hmm.
Which thank God I'm like that. So that's kind of what I did. And like you, I kind of was in the same situation of like, oh my God, what is going on with our healthcare system? I mean, I see it every day with people having health conditions, but also even in physical therapy and things that we see. And we're just like, what the heck did the doctor do to you? This
Hmm.
doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
So it's similar, but life experiences is what bring us into our passions of helping others and helping others not go down a path that a lot of people are going down.
Yeah. Well, I had some motivation there. My mom was one of those people who revered doctors. And I said, they killed my mother early, and she was an active participant, don't misunderstand. But if somebody in a white coat had said, Eleanor, listen, we can do these surgeries, we can prescribe these drugs, but really, this is all going to turn out terribly. You could change your diet and eat better and start exercising. If somebody in a white coat had said that to her, she would have at least considered it. I don't know what she would have done, but you can't be a prophet in your own land. She wouldn't listen to me. And doctors told her that the next surgery, the next drug, the next thing would fix it. And it
Yep.
just made her worse and worse and worse. So I had some incentive. I knew what happens when you go down that medical path when things
Yep.
go wrong. It doesn't turn out well. And it's gotten worse. My mother died in 2012, and I think the medical system is
Oh,
significantly worse now than it was then.
oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, they just don't have enough time to spend with patients. But like when I moved out of the insurance realm and went into where we were marketing and we weren't relying on doctors and people were coming into our office, I'm like, what the heck? Because, we'd always get referrals from doctors. But now I'm just like, wait a second, you had back surgery that created like a foot drop and now they're fusing your foot? Like,
Mhm.
what the heck? No,
Yeah,
no, that is not appropriate at all.
right.
So, I mean, it's very similar and it's very frustrating, which is why I love doing stuff like this because I just want to give people hope that there is a path and we just need to get the message out there.
Right, right. And hopefully, I think there's something going on right now. I always look at the worst of it can be the best of it, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to reach that depth of it can't get any
Yeah.
worse. I mean, it
Yes.
can, but you feel like it can't. And then people start to turn around. And we've seen this, people coming to us earlier to get out of the medical mill. We used to get much older people who were really in the medical mill for a long time. Now we're getting people who are in their 30s and 40s and saying, listen, first of all, I can't get an appointment. When I go in, they give me 7 minutes. They put stuff in my portal that isn't anything to do with me. It's cut and paste kind of stuff. I'm not getting any better, so I got to change course now before I really end up in trouble. And of course, we love when somebody 30 years old says that instead of somebody who's been beat the heck up,
Yeah.
for 40 years and is 70 years old.
Well, and there's more and more information out there. So I do see like more and more doctors that are learning more that are trying. So like there's way more of that now than there was. So there's a lot of positives that are happening. And I think just too with all the movies, and we'll talk about the Forks Over Knives movie here in a second, those are also eye-opening for a lot of people too, realizing, wait a second, there might be something else that I can do. So
Mhm.
I'm excited about that. So tell us a little bit more on Forks Over Knives. So how did it start and how did you get in it? Like, I love the background story of all this stuff.
Oh yeah, so I'll tell you what happened. When I read John McDougall's book, that was the first book I read. And so as soon as my company was big enough to have a conference, the first person I invited was John McDougall to speak. He came out here with Mary, and he was here for 3 or 4 days. And this was when Wellness Forum was just starting, and he was so encouraging. That was one of the things about John, they would love to see people doing this, and he was happy to be speaking for. And I think we had like 200 people. He was impressed with that in Columbus, Ohio, and this is before internet and all that kind of stuff. So really, 200 people in Columbus is a pretty big deal. So anyway, one day I got a phone call from John. This was back in 2008 or nine, late eight or early nine. He goes, I'm having a conference. I'd like you to speak. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is my dream come true. The guy who got me started, right? So I'm all excited about it. So, and one of the things John likes because he made so much video content, he said, give a talk that you never gave before, that you haven't done publicly. So I said, okay. So I worked real hard on my talk, go out, I'm all excited. And Colin Campbell was speaking at the same conference. So about a week after this conference, I get a call from Colin Campbell and he goes, you're not going to believe what happened. I said, what? He said, that conference at John McDougall's, he goes, there's a movie producer there and they're going to make a documentary about my life and my work. I said, that is so exciting. I'm so happy for you. So about a week after that, Colin called again. He goes, just want to give you a heads up. There's that movie producer I told you about and his crew. They really liked you. And they called me and they said, seemed like you knew Pam pretty well. So tell us about her. He goes, they're looking for a science editor. And I thought, well, that would be exciting. So I got hired on as the science editor because they had seen me at this conference. It was great timing for me. And we got to work and about, I don't know, a month in, Brian said, you know what, we're going to come to Columbus and film you. We want you to be in the film, not just working behind the scenes. So that's how that happened. And just a couple of things I'll tell you that are really cool about it. So the first thing is there's so many documentaries about food right now and diet and health and sports nutrition and they're not all great, but a lot of them are really great,
Yeah.
right? Ours was the first. We were the
Yeah.
first people to do it. And I remember somebody saying, not that there was any pressure, you guys, I hope you really make it because if Brian spends all this money and it doesn't go so well, nobody will ever do this again, right? And they were right. The person
Yeah.
was right when they said that. And my dad said, the most positive person in the world was my dad, who died last year. And he was working here at Wellness Farm, helping out at the time. And he goes, Pam, I don't want you to get your hopes up too much with this because, most documentaries don't make money And so I know you're really spending a lot of time on it. I said, God, my dad's like positive. What's he saying? So Colin Campbell and I were doing lectures in South Africa. We're literally standing out with giraffes and elephants in the middle of nowhere. And Brian Wendell calls and says, "You're not going to believe this, but we got picked up by a distributor. We're going to be in theaters in the US and Canada, in North America. We're going to do a theater run." I thought, oh my gosh, this is like beyond our wildest dreams. I just hope somebody would watch it, not the whole theater thing. So we did a red carpet opening in New York and in California and a full theater run. And I got the privilege of co-authoring the companion book, which was on the New York Times list for a long time. And it was really a great success story. So
Yeah, I
anyhow,
mean, I remember when that movie came out, because my first book that I read was Colin Campbell's book, The China
kind of
Study.
study. Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And we even had an event in my office, and you came and you actually spoke at through the phone because I just wanted people to hear it. And so we had a packed house at our office watching the movie, and then you came in and did a question answer after it. And I think I even saw it in the movie theater. We, rallied and tried to get people to go there, but it was the first like food-based documentary that was out there. And even just trying to find like resources to eat like a plant-based diet back then was so hard
I
to find.
know.
Like it was so hard. I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna live on salads because I don't like the other options that are out there.
Well,
And now there's so many options. It's so great. The flavors are amazing that you can do. So we've come a long way.
we definitely have, and I'll tell you a funny story about that. So there was no Whole Foods or anything like that in Columbus back when I started. I started eating better in the early 1990s, and then I opened Wellness Farm in 1996. So that's a period of time when it was like a desert. I remember going to my local Kroger store, and they had a little section like this, and it said health food. And you wonder, well, like, what's the rest of this, right? But there was one, the kind of big health food store, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was very unusual place. And you almost had to wear your beads and tie-dye shirt to go in and feel at home. So we would take people on field trips just so that they wouldn't walk in and turn around and walk out. Well, really, there's some good stuff here. Let me show you the bulk section. Ignore the people at the cash register. Have 7 nose rings. All right, it's really cool. This will be great. Show you a good place to get food. So it has come a long way. Even in airports, I was in what airport was I in? Atlanta, not Atlanta, in Michigan, someplace in a Michigan airport. And I was able to get beans and rice and vegetables. I mean, even the airport has become friendly
Yeah.
to people like us. So it's so much easier now than it used to be. And,
Oh, yes.
there's money in it. That one of the reasons is more people are choosing it. In other words, the airport doesn't put stuff on the menu
Yeah.
that isn't getting sold. So somebody besides me is eating beans, rice, and vegetables for lunch, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, no,
all
I mean, I can remember. So I've always felt like I've been very lucky in Dallas because we always had not restaurants not as good, but like we always had you could get ingredients from any kind of store, any kind of grocery store. Like it wasn't that hard to find ingredients. But I'd go to like my husband's from Tulsa and I go to Tulsa and I wouldn't eat what his family would eat. So I was like, I'm cooking. So
Mhm.
I'd go to the grocery store. We'd have to go to 3 or 4 grocery stores. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have basil? Like you don't have basil? Like
How could you
seriously?
not have
Like, do you know
basil?
what ginger is? Like, you don't have ginger? And I mean, like they didn't have any. I was like, oh my God, we're going from place to place to place looking for ingredients. And I'm like, I can get this at my regular grocery store just down the street. This is crazy. I mean, it's not like that now. It's way better. But I
Right,
was excited. They got a Whole Foods there. I'm like, cool, I can actually find stuff because I know
right.
at least Whole Foods will have it. But yeah, like it's always shocking when I would go to other places and I'm like, what do you mean? Like this is crazy. This is basic stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I remember I was doing a corporate wellness program in a small town called Washington Courthouse that's south of Columbus, and I walked into a grocery store chain. I don't remember which one it was, but I said, "Do you have soy milk someplace in here?" And the guy said, "I think we do. What do you want to do with it?" And I thought, that's a strange question. I said, "Well, I'm a performance artist. I use it for that." He goes, "Oh, okay." Like that was, I thought, wow. But it was an unusual time, and so
Yeah.
things are so much different now.
Yeah.
Restaurants, I'll tell you one of the most encouraging things I saw. was before all this, the world came to an end in 2020, new restaurant opened. And the woman who owns it got interviewed by our local newspaper. And so she was talking about how broad an appeal her restaurant would have. So she says the menu has a lot of seafood, has a lot for your carnivores, and we have a very big vegan section. And the reporter says that's interesting. Not every restaurant appeals to that. She goes, "Oh, you can't open a restaurant in Columbus unless you accommodate people who eat that diet." And I thought, wow, I think she's right about that. I
Yeah.
mean, and I do well at steakhouses. They have baked potatoes and
Yeah.
vegetables, so there's always something to eat. But I think that that's really where we are right now, is that you just can't put out a menu that appeals to a very narrow part of the
Yeah.
market. And the meat eaters, the non-vegetarians, they're becoming a smaller group, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely see the trend moving in that direction. Even if they do eat meat, it's much less than what they used to eat. I'd
Mhm.
always like go to restaurants and like, why is there a big slab of meat and then like two asparaguses? Like,
Right.
can I like do the reverse?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't get that. I don't get that at all. Um, so I know you're a big advocate for reform in health
Mhm.
and our food industry. So tell us a little bit more about that and like what you've been doing in the background.
Yeah, so the big issue in health is informed consent. And it's legislated. Every state has a law that says that before a doctor does something to you, whatever it is, ranging from a prescription drug to a vaccine to a procedure, whatever, the physician or nurse practitioner, whoever it is supposed to tell you, this is what you have, this is what I'm recommending. These are the benefits of doing it, the risks associated with it, alternatives to it, including the alternative to do nothing. So I've been in this business. I opened my company 28 years ago, never met anybody who has had that discussion with a healthcare provider. Instead, when people come in here, what we hear is, if I'd known then what I know now, I wouldn't have, and then you can fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Had this procedure, taken this drug, agreed to this test, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, our whole business is based on the idea that if that has happened to you, you just don't want it to happen anymore, right? So you
Right.
come in here and you may have some regret about things that you did in the past, but before you get ready to do the next thing, as long as it's not an emergency, of course, let's take a look at all of the options and the risks and the benefits, including doing nothing about whatever it is. And then you can make an informed decision. So I am building a healthcare company around that idea, the requirement for informed consent. It's not about rationing. So I might not want to have something myself based on my understanding of it. But if somebody asks for it and they're fully informed and they want it, we will, of course, provide it. So, but we do know that when people are informed, they consume less healthcare, and that's what we need because we
Yeah.
can't just. It hit 4.5 trillion last year. So
Yeah.
unless you can print money like the government, there's no future to this, right?
Yeah.
So we opened our first clinic right here in this office in the room next to me earlier this year, and we're going to open hundreds and hundreds of them as soon as we figure out what we're doing here. So it's always a learning experience when you
Oh,
do,
always.
right?
Yeah. And that's amazing because we do the same thing for our clients. Like, even if we need to send them because we're like, there's something off, we need to send you to figure this out, but go to the doctor and then come back here and let's talk about it. So we'll actually spend the time with you to go through like, this is what they said. This makes sense. This doesn't make sense. And so we can kind of help them navigate that system a little bit better and figure out like what their next steps are. But I
Mhm.
mean, golly, we have 4 therapists in my office. And we probably only send maybe 2 people to surgery per year. We
Mhm.
pull way more people out of surgery. Like, our
Right.
body doesn't need it. I mean, like, if you can figure out what's going on and spend the time and put the pieces of the puzzle together, most people just started hurting one day. They didn't fall. They don't know what
Mhm.
they did. And so having them, help them navigate that a little bit better is what we do.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's same kind of same concept. So tell us about your wellness forum, who you see, how you started it.
Yeah, so it was very organic process. I got all interested in this and started just informal conversations with people, and then I thought, I got to do this for a living. And at the time, and I was happily employed before this. I wasn't really looking to change, but so I went back to school, got some education, terrible education, I'll add. I think, but I don't even use my credentials. But I'm serious. And by the way, I think a lot of healthcare education is not very good. If you're a medical
Oh,
doctor, you went to naturopathy school, whatever it is that you learned how to do, you have to re-engineer yourself to be useful.
yeah.
You're practicing outside the box and physical
Oh,
therapy.
yeah, 100%. Didn't learn anything of this in school.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so I thought I'm going to do this informed consent, offer this informed consent process, and I thought to myself, gosh, knowing what I knew about business, if I could have the marketplace to myself for 5 years, I would be so happy. Well, here we are 28 years later, and there's really not. I mean, I meet people like you who are doing this, and I meet a lot of people who acknowledge the need for it, but it's not ever going to infiltrate medicine, which is
No.
what I hoped for in the beginning. So that's where we grew to the place where we can think about building a healthcare system ourselves. But we started offering memberships and building libraries, and the whole idea is somebody comes in saying, "I know something's wrong, but I don't know what's wrong." Sometimes they have a diagnosis. They often know that what they're being told to do doesn't sound like the right thing. But we teach people how to read the medical literature and how to have good conversations with their doctors. I mean, we can prescribe here for people who live locally because of the clinic. But for the first 28 years I was in business, there was nobody prescribing. So our people go back to their physicians and say, "I'll say yes to this and no to that, and I'm going to
Mm.
give second opinion on this." And we know from tracking them that they use a whole lot less healthcare in terms of financial investment than the average person. So because of the fact that we weren't offering direct care, there's always an advantage to disadvantage and advantage.
Yeah.
Advantage was we were able to do business in 33 different countries because we can talk to somebody in Afghanistan about their health just as easily as
Yeah.
somebody who lives in North Dakota, right? I mean, Zoom's made it even easier to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I kind of equate our healthcare system to like taking your car into the shop. You can go into like the regular like dealership and they're going to hook it up to a computer and 25 things are going to spout out. We need to do all these things. Like, no, no, no. There's one. What is that? But you take it to
Right.
like a mechanic that kind of understands and goes, it's not this, it's not this. This is where we need to go into. If it's not this, then it's this. But all we have to do is test it and we're going to figure out which one it is. And that's
Right.
essentially what the difference is, that there's way more mechanics that are doing that versus the people that are just like critically thinking through the whole process of everything.
Right.
And that's the problem. I mean, it's not like testing's bad, but we over test. And I mean,
Right.
just like, I mean, MRIs, if you're older, you're gonna, everything's gonna show up. Like it's
Right.
just like we get wrinkles on our face as we get older. It's just we get like that in our bones and our structures too. It doesn't mean that that's where your pain's coming from, but that's what
Right.
they rely on. And here's an injection, and here's surgery. Oh, that didn't work. Here's another surgery.
Right.
And just even people with like autoimmune conditions, we can figure out that this is not mechanical. You have some sort of autoimmune condition, and we've got to get you someone that's going to actually be able to help it. Or emotional, you have an emotional component to this. Like you can figure it out because if it's mechanical, it's very predictable.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Exactly.
it's just sad that we don't have more people that can do that or will spend the time to do that. But insurance will allow you to do it. I mean, you can't do a 15-minute conversation that insurance is going to pay for and figure things out. It's not going to
Well, I
happen.
think there are a couple of things about that are important. I think the first thing is that medicine has been very effective at teaching consumers that it's just so complicated you can't understand it. I think buying a house is pretty complicated. It sure is a lot of money, but I've never met anybody who stood in the driveway with a realtor and said, "I'm so stupid about real estate. You're just gonna have to tell me where to live," right? They'll figure it out. Like they look at the
Yes.
comps, they figure out how to buy a house and not get taken advantage of, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And the same thing with cars. Nobody walks into a dealership and says, "I'm a mechanical idiot, so just tell me what to drive and where
Yeah.
to," so we have to get people to the place where they understand that the most important gift you have is your body, and you have to treat it at least as well as you will treat your other possessions.
Yeah.
And it's your job to learn about this stuff so you make better decisions. And again, I think the system can't fix itself, so we're going to have to do something outside, and that's going to involve cash. But it needs to go back to cash for this reason.
Oh,
They call it health insurance. It's not because the way that health insurance is handled right now, it would be like me turning in a claim to my homeowner's insurance company when the gutters need replaced. Or if a tree falls on the house, that's when you call your insurance company.
yeah.
not when the gutters need replaced or you need a new garage door. You're expected to maintain stuff on your own. And the fact that you pay cash for it makes you a much more discerning consumer than when you
Absolutely.
sign here and it's all free and there's no accountability for it at all. So if we have to go back to cash, it's the only way that this will ever work. And then we'll have some type of a cost sharing program. You can't call it insurance with the restrictions we'll put on it, but some kind of a cost sharing program. So when the equivalent of the tree falling on your house happens, you'll be covered for that. But you
Yeah.
have to maintain yourself. You have to take care of your body the way you take care of your other important
Yeah.
possessions.
Well, and when insurance changed, where because it used to be you paid for cash and then you go file it and then you get paid, and then once when it switched where the provider started doing everything for you, and that's when I was like, well, this is like monopoly money. Like, there's no money
Mhm.
exchange, so there's no like. I don't, do I want to spend the money with you or do I want to spend the money with you? Like, if we get back to where you have to actually pay for it, you're going to think about like where you want to go and who's going to be able to help you. And a lot of this is going to be solved by just doing that. But it's, yeah, I mean, and the people that will come in like, I have health, I pay for health insurance. I'm like, great, go use it. Go use it and see
Yeah,
what it gets you. I'm like, yes, I mean, so do I, but I don't use it unless I absolutely need it because I'd rather go to someone that I know is going to be able to help me. You're going to spend way more money going through the medical system than you ever
mhm.
would finding someone and paying some cash to get the root cause of the problem solved.
Exactly. Well, I think there's another issue too. A lot of people in our country, we're very spoiled here, and people
Yes.
don't like to be inconvenienced. But one thing I've started talking to people about, particularly in the last few years, I think you have to choose the inconvenience that you want to sign up for.
Yeah.
So it might be inconvenient to pay out of pocket for physical therapy or for a consult with a doctor or out of pocket for a prescription if you need it or whatever. But you know what's really inconvenient? When a botched orthopedic surgery that you didn't need in the first place renders you disabled,
Yeah.
because 20 years of disability is very inconvenient.
Yeah.
So you pick the inconvenience that you want to sign up for, and because there's no convenient life where everything just goes great and you don't ever have to spend money you don't want to spend. I mean, that just doesn't
Doesn't
exist. So
exist.
pick the option that you think you can
We're
live
trying to
with.
make it exist.
Right. Yeah, right. But it doesn't exist now, so you have to make choices and learn to make better choices
Yeah.
about.
Absolutely. And that's why we're so excited for you to come down because we're going to be doing a talk on a lot of these different topics from cognitive diseases and how we can prevent some of these things. Menopause and perimenopause like is a hot topic. There's so much bad information out there. I mean, one of the things I love about you is just how much information you consume and even research and how you're able to talk about it in a very simplistic way. So you don't have to come and be like, I don't know if I'm going to understand anything. No, you're going to understand everything. You're going
I
to understand
promise.
everything. I promise.
Mhm.
And so we're really excited to have you come down and really just provide education to this community. And then we'll have questions too. So we have people when they sign up, they'll have some hot topic questions that they want to get answers. So we'll be able to tailor it to them a little bit more as well after you kind of do the presentation. So we're really, really excited for you to come down.
Me too. I love that. And I love Q&A. I could do that all the time. In
Yeah.
fact, my favorite thing that I do every month, for all the people who are a member of my practice group and member of Wellness Forum, I do conversations with Pam. In fact, that's the name of my next book coming out, Conversations with Pam. But it's just open Q&A for 90 minutes, and we do it twice a month. And it's a great chance for people to say, my neighbor told me about blah, blah, blah. What do you think about that? And what do you think? And it's a great opportunity to answer questions and cover a lot of ground, with a whole lot of people at the same time. But it also teaches a thinking process, and I can watch my new members over time get more and more discerning. And they'll go from my neighbor says to, oh, I just want to let you know, my neighbor says blah blah blah. Oh, I looked it up. I already figured it out. It's a crock of crap, whatever. And they become more, as they listen to more and more of this, they become
Yeah.
more and more self-sufficient and more and more, I don't want to use the word suspicious, but just cautious. Like
Oh,
they
yeah.
jump on everything that everybody tells them, whether
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
physician or a teacher or whatever. It's like, interesting, I'll check that out. Most of the
Yeah.
time they check it out and go, not so much.
Yeah. I mean, they do this similar with like all my emails that I send out and all the education I send out. They usually are like, I don't buy that. Nope. I'm going to go get another opinion, or you need to go to hear someone. You need to go and talk to them so that you can get some information because what you're being told is not right. Like, that's not right.
Or even just waiting for things to pass. I think another thing that the medical system has done that's very counterproductive is every ache, pain, sense of discomfort, anything needs medical attention. And also the catastrophizing of all symptoms. And I'm
Mm.
not kidding when I say some people will say, I've been having this pain in my left arm and I don't know what it is. And I don't know, it's just kind of stiff and sore. You think I should go have it checked out? No. I mean, your left arm is a little stiff and sore. Well, I was working in the yard over the weekend. Well,
Yeah.
for but that's training. That's
Yeah.
indoctrination.
Yeah.
Doctors know how to fix this stuff. If there's something wrong, the early detection saves lives. So the earlier we catch something, gosh, if you have hangnails, that's probably a symptom that your skin's going to fall off at some point in time. You better go check it out before your skin just sheds itself on your kitchen floor. But people are very, very, very hypersensitive to like every body sensation, and that's not productive either.
Well, I think some of that comes from like past experiences of things, and it's like, oh my God, I don't want to get like that. And
Mhm.
usually we tell people like if things are lingering for like longer than 2 or 3 weeks, then you probably need to get checked out. But if you come in here like usually something like that, it's like, there you go, do this one thing, you're good. And
Mhm.
then they're
Right,
good to
right,
go. And so we can kind of help manage that way better than a physician, because they're going to go and do MRIs and like, oh, it's really bad. Like, I think it's arthritis, or I think it's, whatever they think it is.
right.
And I'm like, no, like, it's not even a shoulder issue. It's actually a neck issue. And just do this one thing and then you're gonna be good. And they're like, oh, wow. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, the simpler is better. And
yeah,
I think that's another message too. The simplest explanation for something is usually the best one,
yeah,
Occam's razor. And the simplest solution to the simplest situation is the
yeah,
best one, and save the complexity for later. And the good thing about being the way that you and I are in our own businesses is we're not trying to cover our rear ends against lawsuits and that sort of thing. That's where a lot of this excessive testing comes from. Like if we do everything possible we can do to you, if something, God forbid, happens, we can tell your family that we exhausted all options,
yeah.
right? And that's particularly true with cancer patients. So they'll do everything possible. And they can say then to a family member, listen, we did everything but tie her up in the basement and deprive her of food till she did what we said. And that kind of thing. So it's a different mentality in those institutional situations than it is on the outside.
Yeah. Well, and I think people want just honesty, and that's, if you give them the honesty of like, listen, these are all our options, and I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to do our best to help you. Like, that's what they want.
Mhm.
They don't want like, whoa, we did all the testing and it's no longer, it's out of my hands.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Pass
I'm
the
like,
clock on
that just
down.
pisses me off. Like,
Right.
you know,
Right.
but it is what it is. And that's why we're here to hopefully help guide people and better options, and just giving them people education to make a better decision about what they want to do next.
Mhm. Actually, yes. That's it. That's it.
That's
That's
it. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much. This is so awesome. I love sharing stories of people, and where they came and how they started doing what they're doing. And I'm so excited for you to come down to Dallas. And it's going to be a great event.
I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun.